Hey TV fans, bored now, back with Rachel Macdonald. It's time to brew yourself a cup of coffee, sit back and enjoy our review of Gilmore Girls Season 2, Episode 2. The episode is called Hammers and Vails. So full spoilers from the start of this review. And this is a nice little treat because it's the first time Rachel has guest starred on one of these reviews. It won't be the last time. We will have her back for future reviews. She probably won't be on all of them, but we'll have her on as many as possible because I know she's a big fan of the show as well. So before we talk about the episode, do you just want to say a bit about that, like why you like this show so much?
Yeah, of course. I started watching this show as a teenager, so I was definitely the right target audience. In fact, I think I was about 15 when it first came out, so I was literally the same age as Rory. And I remember what really captured me about this. Obviously, Lorelai was a very different mother than the mothers that we'd seen on TV. You know, up until then, it had all been like Carol Brady type mothers. You know, they were all older, they were all established, they were all married. So to see a young mother like Lorelai, a character like that, was very, very refreshing in the early 2000s. The dialogue, I think, was the first thing that really got me about this series. You know, I love the rapid fire dialogue. I think all of the actors have great comedic timing and can deliver these lines really, really well. The setting of Stars Hollow, obviously, is so charming. You know, the little quintessential, like, American town. I love most of the quirky characters. There are some that get on my nerves. And I think the show does a really good job of building out and showing all the different connections. And I like watching Lorelai slowly reconnect with her parents. I do, and we can talk about this more as we talk about the series, as I join you for more episodes. I do have some issues with Lorelai and her parents and the way that everything is handled and the way the show portrays certain things. But I do love that we get to see the slow progress of them getting to know each other again and getting to know Rory and getting to see Lorelai as an adult. And I just think in general, this is one of those shows that is so easy to just throw on in the background and just watch and just kind of enjoy. It's light. It doesn't get too deep. It's got, you know, it tackles some serious issues. Obviously, it's based around teen pregnancy, which, you know, even back then, even now, is still quite a taboo and, you know, it's serious subject matter. And, you know, we get to see Rory come of age, but we also kind of get to see Lorelai come of age, just as an like an older person. And now watching it now as an adult and actually being older than Lorelai is at the beginning of the series is a very interesting experience because I see certain things differently and I see certain situations differently than I may have. And Lorelai seems much younger than she used to, obviously, now because I'm like 5 years older than she is at the beginning of the series. So just, yeah, I like the warmth of the series. I like that it doesn't get too bogged down because, you know, in the early 2000s, we had a lot of dramas. You know, we had like the OC and we had Skins and we had like really intense dramas. So it was nice to have a show that was just light. You know, just light and just fun and just followed these characters and just had a lot of fun with it. So, and I think it's a show that, yes, exactly. And some aspects haven't aged fantastically, but for the most part, I think it's still pretty good. You know, I watch it now and it's still, you know, enjoyable and it's not too cringe. So I think it does, for the most part, hold up all right.
Hold up. Yeah, I would agree with that because reality is probably any show which is like 20 years, 20
of course,
years, because this started in 2000. There's always going to be some stuff, but yeah, generally speaking, I think it holds up. And my experience of this was a bit different because I didn't grow up on it. I actually saw it for the first time 5 or 6 years ago, so quite recently, and I just heard a lot about it. And probably it's the sort of show that didn't really seem like it would be for me until I started watching it. And yeah, like you, I absolutely love it. The dialogue, the banter. I just love how the way Stars Hollow represents small town life so well. I think it really captures the sense of community and family in small towns. And I just sort of love the fact that in its own way, it's like a Twin Peaks style town, but for a very different sort of show, obviously. So I like that about it. Then it has that quirky sort of off the beaten track sort of feel to it, and Yeah, very likable characters, a lot of charming moments, great dialogue, and just for me as a nerd and for you as a nerd, the level of pop culture references.
Oh, amazing.
It's insane.
So good. And it's not,
It's so broad where, like, because there'll be obvious ones, but then they'll just mention a film that I've not even heard of, or just they'll mention like a British politician or something. Like, it's just so random, you know. But it's really great stuff.
One of my favorite thing about the references is some of them are like, okay, so pop cultural references in movies and TV shows are usually fairly obvious. You know, they're well-known ones that like everyone will understand, you know, Spidey sense or the bat signal or, you know, stuff that is in the pop culture osmosis. But Gilmore Girls has references that you'd only know if you actually watch the show. For example, it has my favorite Buffy reference ever. So most other shows would be like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Buffy Summers, but there's a great line in season 5 where Paris is heading out and Rory's like, it's 11 o'clock at night. Who are you hoping to hook up with now? Spike and Drusilla? And I'm like, that is such a great reference, because you'd only get that if you'd actually watched Buffy. So I really like, that the reference, and I think that's more realistic because like I use a lot of references in my day-to-day life. And I do stuff like that. You don't say the obvious, you say the well-known stuff, the inside jokes that you actually know between people. So that's one of the things I love about the pop culture references, is they're not just blatant on the nose, everyone knows these references. They're real references that you have to have watched these shows to kind of go, oh, okay, that's a reference to that. And I think it's actually quite clever, and I really like that.
Yeah, because I remember once they referenced this 80s movie, I think it was, called Hard Bodies, and I've not even heard of that movie. It's and I went back and looked it up. I think, okay, no, I've never even heard of this one. Some good drama along the way, even though it's a lighter, escapist sort of show. You do get some good dramatic scenes, and it does explore some good realistic like issues as well, which you would naturally have with a mother and daughter when you follow them along. And obviously at the start of the show, Rory starts off in a very important place in her adolescence, and we literally see her grow up into an adult, and that's part of the appeal, and that's why I think the show justifies having 7 seasons, because then you do see a good amount of her growing up type thing. So that's good stuff. And do you have a favorite character?
Yeah, I have a few. Usually Emily. I love Emily Gilmore, and she's usually at the top of my list. I also love Paris Geller, because Paris Geller is what every young woman should be. That girl is fantastic. I mean, she's a freaking mess, but she's amazing. And I also love Lane Kim. And if I join you for later season reviews, I've got a lot to say about Lane's eventual fate on the show. But Lane in particular, I relate to a lot, because I had very strict parents, almost exactly like Mrs. Kim. They weren't religious, but they were very controlling and very strict. And I was basically Lane, hiding things under my bed and in hidden areas of my room and sneaking out to meet boys, and, you know, not feeling like I could actually do anything without my parents like finding out. So yeah, Lane, and also being an Asian character, I always tend to gravitate towards Asian characters as well. So yeah, Lane Kim, and I think Keiko Agena is so good, and Mrs. Kim as well is just fantastic. But Emily would be up the top of my list, because I just love Emily Gilmore, and I think that oh my god, her actress's name, Kelly Bishop. I think Kelly Bishop
is
so good. I think her comedic timing is some of the best on the show, and I think some of the lines they give her just so good. She's just got, and I love any scene with her and Lorelai, because I think Kelly and Lauren work really well together, and they have such great chemistry. So yes, what about you? Who's your favorite character?
Yeah, well, your top 3 is close to mine, because my top 3 would be Lane, Paris, and Lorelai. That would be I would probably go with Luke as number 4. I really like.
I got some issues with Luke, but we'll get there.
Yep. You know, I think I like his deadpan humor. I think he's a very relatable working class character in many ways. But we can talk more about him. But yeah, Lane is just one of the great TV best friends, really. I love
isn't she?
the dynamic with her and Rory so much. So.
Me too.
Of the episode obviously sets it up very nicely because the hammer is like that cute fluffy hammer which Lorelai gives to Rory to embarrass her some more because of course. So the plot with Rory is that she has to do this extracurricular activity to improve her chances of getting into college. So they have to build a house as part of this, and that's what the hammer's for. And we find out in this episode that Paris being Paris has gone to extremes from a very early age in this stuff, and Rory starts panicking that maybe she hasn't done enough. And that puts strain on her relationship with Dee, with obviously the wedding veil with Lorelai, because she's picking that out, and we're getting closer to the potential wedding with Max.
Yeah.
And that becomes a big drama in the episode because she hasn't told Emily. So when they come over for Friday night dinner and she tells her, Emily is really cold and standoffish, and Lorelai doesn't know why. And it's revealed later on in the episode that Emily already knows, and she's upset at being one of the last to find out, and to find out from
someone else. Yes.
So that becomes a big dramatic point of the episode. So Rachel, what do you think of this episode?
You know, I think Gilmore Girls is one of those shows where a lot of the episodes, they're fairly solid, you know, because they're not trying to do anything huge. It's not like a show like Buffy where you have to move the plot along every week and you have to have new reveals. I think the good thing about Gilmore Girls is a lot of the episodes, they get to be very character driven, you know, so you're more getting to know the characters and their world and seeing how their dynamics work. So I like both of the storylines that run through this. I really do love Rory building a house, and I love like when she's going to sign up for it and Paris is trying to talk her out of it. She's like, you don't want to do this. It's not you. And Rory's like, you don't know me. It could be me. I could have multiple personalities. And then Paris is like, fine, go. And Rory's like, why don't you want me to go? And Paris is like, I don't care what you do. You know, she's being typical Paris. I love that we meet Tom in this episode. Tom, who becomes a character later on down the track, the contractor at the work site.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's Tom who ends up working on the inn. So I think that's a nice bit of continuity, you know. They've obviously brought this actor in just for this. The hammer is just the funniest thing ever. Just when Lorelai gives it to Rory and she's like, what is that? It's like, it's a hammer. What am I supposed to do with it? Build a really pretty house. And then when she pulls it out on the work site and the guy's like, really? And she's like, no, it's really a hammer under there, I promise.
Yeah, that's very good.
Yeah, that's cute. Rory has one of my favorite lines from this episode, but it is not a PC line, so no one come at me for this. But I absolutely love when she's talking to Dean and she's freaking out about her extracurriculars, and at the end she's like, I have to find a retarded kid and teach him how to play softball.
I
just love that. This and then Lorelai and Emily. Oh my God, Lorelai and Emily. It's one of those episodes where I can see both points of view, and I just think, oh my God, you two have got to work on your communication.
Yeah, I was gonna say something.
Yeah,
ask you about
because
this.
I think, you know, because we see the previous episode, we see Suki call Emily and talk about the engagement, and Emily is devastated. And in that same episode, the previous one, Richard and Rory have a fight, and Emily goes to Richard and she's like, you're going to call Rory and you're going to apologize to her. And then she's like, our daughter is getting married and she did not tell us. And you just see the hurt on Emily's face. Like, you know that she's been really hurt. However, she chooses the absolute worst way to deal with it. Because, like you said, Lorelai doesn't know that Emily knows. So as far as Lorelai is concerned, she's come to her mother with this great news, this big thing that's happening in her life. And her mother's just like, oh, that's nice. I'm going to go check on the salads. And it's like, Emily, honey, no. Like, you don't you don't act like that. That's not the proper way to deal with this. But this is so on brand for Emily and Lorelai, at this point in time, especially this early in the series when they're just starting to get to know each other again and they're just starting to integrate back into each other's lives. So that scene where Lorelai comes to the house and she's yelling at her mother, I feel so bad for both of them in that scene. I feel so bad for Lorelai because she doesn't understand why her mother's acting like this. But then when she's all like, do you know how it felt to tell you this? And Emily's like, no, I don't know. Possibly it felt very similar to finding out from a complete stranger that your daughter was getting married and had told everyone before she told you. And I can see her perspective, but it's like, but you handled it so badly.
So badly, yeah.
Yeah. So overall, I do think this is a great episode as far as characterization goes and as far as, again, moving that relationship with Lorelai and her mother forward a bit more. And I love all the little funny bits, like Lorelai coming down the stairs with the newspaper on her head, like to have the veil.
Yeah, that's a very cute scene. Rory making fun of her, yeah.
And then, Lorelai's talking and Rory's just like, and Laura's like, are you reading me? And just like that. Just so fun. So I had a lot of fun with this episode. And like I said, when I watched this episode for this review, it made me miss the series. And I went back and started from the beginning. So how did you go with this episode? Because you've been watching through, obviously. So did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it's a good episode. I really like it. And I agree with you about the Lorelai and Emily stuff. And I'm actually on the same page where I think they're both probably equally at fault, and communication is the key, because obviously Lorelai, probably because of past stuff with Emily, didn't really communicate with her and was reluctant, should have told her sooner about the wedding. Probably secretly it's partly because she's having doubts of her own over whether she should marry this guy, but Emily, like you said, did handle it so badly. But once again, props to Kelly Bishop, because she is so good in this episode. And, a lot of times with Gilmore Girls, it's sort of the acting isn't one of the things you're going to talk about that much about being a standout. Obviously, they're good actors and stuff, and they're good in their roles, but you don't get so much of the really dramatic stuff in it. But this is a good example where you can see what a great actress Emily Kelly Bishop is. Because that stare she gives Lorelai in the scene, when she comes round and confronts her over it and they have their big fight and Max is standing there all awkward. And, just that stare she gives Lorelai, and the way she shows that Emily is just so hurt over all this is just fantastic. Up at the end as well. That's a really nice scene.
That's a beautiful scene.
It's a good sort of, reaching out an olive branch sort of scene where this is the first step. I'm going to include you in this. And because at first you think Emily's like putting her down again, because she kind of says,
your head is too big for a veil.
But then she suggests the tiara, and it's a really nice touch. She's suggesting it because she wore one. That's a really nice,
I love that
touch.
Yes, because I like that with that scene, they don't go over the top. They don't suddenly make Emily and Lorelai start hugging and, being really sweet with each other. They show that they're making up in their own way. Lorelai's way to make up is to come and ask her mother advice. I mean, Emily's is to say, wear a tiara. And then that little, that's what I wore, is like her way of saying, it'll be a family tradition. Do what I did. It would be beautiful if you did the same thing that I did at my wedding. And it's that little moment there. And I love those little moments between Emily and Lorelai, whenever they have those moments where they actually manage to connect and kind of form a little bit of a bond between one another. But of course, she's Emily, so she has to do it in a very Emily way. Your head is too big for a veil. It's like, thanks, Mum. That's nice. That's what I want to hear. Bishop, credit to Lauren Graham. And I think those two, like I said, together, they're just some of my favorite scenes in the show are Emily and Lorelai scenes, because they just have such great chemistry together and they have such a fractured relationship. So it's really nice to see them slowly repair it. And this is one of those episodes that really showcases that.
Yes, so much history there. It makes for a great dynamic, a very realistic dynamic, and
yeah,
lots to talk about with their relationship over the show.
yeah.
But Emily is one of those characters. I think she's a bit like Xander in Buffy, where she can be a really frustrating character.
Yes, she can.
But when she comes good, she really comes good, and
Yeah.
she almost makes up for all the dodgy shit she's like come out with. Rory in the hospital in season 1, where she actually makes Rory feel good about herself, and she actually sticks up for Rory and points out that this isn't your fault, sort of thing.
Oh, are you talking about the scene when Christopher's parents are there and they make Rory feel like crap, and Emily's like, no matter what you heard tonight about disappointment, your existence and your being has never ever been part of that. Yeah. I think with Emily,
wonderful.
They really, and I don't feel this as much with Richard, but with Emily, I really always feel that despite all the mistakes she makes and despite the passive aggressiveness and everything, at the heart of everything is she just wants to be close to her daughter. That's all she wants. She just wants to be close to Lorelai and to be a part of Lorelai and Rory's life. But unfortunately, she's passive aggressive and she's overly critical, and she unfortunately makes some very bad decisions. I mean, that being said, I find Lorelai frustrating too. I think it's definitely a two-way street with them. You know, neither of them quite know how to communicate with the other, and it takes quite a few seasons and quite a few of these kind of incidents.
That's fair.
Yeah.
The Richard Rory relationship.
I do love
because they have
Rory.
a cute, and obviously they have a scene where they make up, and I actually quite like how they sort of put the other two to shame, the way they handle it, because they go off into another room and they're mature about it. You know, that was our first fight, and
I know.
You know,
it's
I'm
so
sorry.
Cute.
And
I love when Richard's like, he's like, I didn't care for it, and Rory's like, neither did I, and I'm like, you two are so cute. Because obviously, and we see this more as the series goes on, Rory is very much like Richard, and Lorelai, despite her protestations to the contrary, is so much like her mother. So you definitely have those two relationships, you know, that make sense, and those two dynamics that work really well.
Yeah, there's some really nice Richard and Rory scenes over the show, because I really like them reading the paper together, because they've got a bit more of an interest, in like modern affairs and stuff. And the episode quite early on when they go golfing is very, very nice.
I love that episode. That one is so cute. Yeah.
Think about Max. Do you think he's a good fit for Lorelai? Do you like the character? Not really.
I like the character. Like, I don't mind Max. He's not bad. There's nothing spectacular about him, but there's nothing offensive about him either. He's just kind of there.
Yeah.
I don't really like him and Lorelai. For one thing, I'm very much on the side of you shouldn't date your daughter's teacher. That's just never going to lead anywhere good. Like, I think there are certain things that you have to keep separate in life, and I really don't think you should be dating your daughter's teacher, especially at a school like Chilton, because we all know where that ended up in season 1. I also do think that Max kind of rushed Lorelai into the proposal. I think the issue with Max is is obviously very settled. He's settled, he's secure, he knows exactly what he wants, he's in a teaching position that he likes, and he knows that he wants to get married and he wants to go up. Whereas Lorelai is still not particularly settled at this point in her life. Like, obviously she has a good job and she still provides for her daughter, but you know, she's still got dreams about opening the inn. She's still got some growing up to do. I just don't think they're on the same wavelength, and I don't think they were ever really going to work, because I think Max is just far too stable, which sounds really weird, but he's too like stead and solid, and Lorelai is a bit of a free spirit, especially at this point.
Place in their
life. Very different places, and you can obviously see that Lorelai is not ready for this engagement, and maybe she said yes because she just got overwhelmed, or she thought maybe she could try to be married to Max or something, but it's very clear from the beginning that she's not ready for this.
Yeah, Rory, I like their sort of connection. And that might be another thing. That might be another reason why they went down the proposal route, is I think maybe Lorelai saw him as a good father figure to Rory, maybe. I think that could have played a part. But Yeah, he's a decent enough character. I agree with you. He's not really a standout, but he's fine. But yeah, I agree he's not a good fit for Lorelai. No. I have to say, overall, apart from Luke, I don't really like any of her love interests. Not really. I mean,
yeah, that's typical.
You don't really like Luke, do you? So, screw you.
And I don't really like him and Lorelai. You know who my pick for Lorelai? No, it's going to get worse. Do you know who my pick for Lorelai is? Who I love Lorelai with and think she belongs with?
Is it? Okay, yeah, that is. Well, what I was going to say about that is that's the sort of relationship I can understand, and I can understand it as they were young, they were naive, they got together, that sort of thing. But when we see Christopher in the show, I don't actually like him. I find him quite annoying, and I'm not a big fan of that character.
Oh, we're going to have some fun discussions because I love Christopher. So, this will be fun.
Yeah, I did actually mock him once. I put together a video where I had him on the motorcycle and I was playing Born to Be Wild in the background.
Look, I will admit, season 1, Chris, is no. When he turned up in season 1, the first time I ever watched it, I was like, who is this punk? But I find from season 2 onwards, I really like Chris, and I really like him and Lorelai together. So if I join you for some more season 2 episodes, that could be an interesting discussion.
Yeah, like I think as a father, he's a decent enough father, but yeah. I don't really like him in general. Because for a moment, I thought you were going to say that sort of yuppie character she dates for a while.
Jason?
The business guy.
Yeah, Jason.
He's pretty.
No. Look, I actually like Jason as a character, but I don't think he has any chemistry with Lorelai. So I don't particularly like them as a pairing.
That's fair. A serial killer myself. But...
Oh no!
He looks pretty psychotic, so Lorelai maybe got out at the right time. Fan of Rory and Dean or not?
Okay, it's complicated. So I do actually. Okay, so here's the thing. I actually do like Rory and Dean. In season 1, I think they're actually really cute, and I think that their relationship is really sweet and very much shows what it's like to have your first, kind of teenage relationship. They have their ups and downs. The whole I love you debacle was a bit of a disaster. But I do like Dean. My issue is that I really do feel like the series writers ruined Dean's character to make way for Jess. And I don't like what they did to Dean's character in order to make Jess the better option. In season 1, Dean might not be quite as smart as Rory, but he definitely keeps up. He references music that she knows. They talk about obscure TV shows. At one point in time, they're seen discussing Jane Austen, and he talks about how he wants her to read Hunter Thompson. Like, he's very much presented as her equal. He's also the big city kid. He comes from Chicago. He rides a motorbike. He even has a little bit of a bad boy edge. Like Lorelai says, he reminds me of Christopher. But then in season 2, it's like they introduce Jess, and Jess is supposed to be the bad boy. So then they were like, oh, well, we have to make Dean boring by comparison. And all of a sudden, he's not compatible with Rory anymore. All of a sudden, he doesn't know her music. All of a sudden, he's dumb. All of a sudden, he's not the city boy anymore. And I'm like, you don't have to make Dean stupid to make Jess a romantic option. Why would you ruin Dean's character? So that's kind of my feelings when it comes to Dean. What about you?
I think Dean was always dumb. I mean, you look at him and you just think there's not much going on with this guy.
Oh, poor Jared. Poor Jared Padalecki.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I don't really buy their relationship. I thought in season 1 when they first started getting close, he came off as a bit of a stalker. He admitted what. No, he does. Like, it's in like either the first or second episode. He admits to watching her reading at the bus stop. That is,
but I mean, that's what you do with your crushes when you're 16. You watch them.
No, if you like them, you go up and talk to them.
Not when you're 16. When you're 16 and stupid and have no courage, you stare at them.
No, Rachel.
Okay. That's now everyone thinks I'm a stalker.
Yeah.
But it's true. When you like someone, you do tend to watch them.
Yeah, but let me explain. Let me explain what I'm saying. To put this into context, if there was a girl across from me in the next building who I had a crush on, and I just stood there all day watching her from the window, you would think that would be creepy. You'd think you're going all Hitchcock on her.
Well, at 40, I would think it was creepy. At 16, I might just think you're a hormone-addled teenager. There's a different code for teenagers.
But you have to remember this is a TV show, so they have to give us characters that we actually like, and regardless of if you think it's realistic. I just thought the line was a bit off when he said that. I just thought it came across as a bit creepy. And it might just be because of the size difference, and I'm not sure really if there was much of an age difference in the actors, but I think just because he always comes across as a bit of an older guy.
Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. No, I'm pretty sure Jared and Alexis were fairly close in age.
It would make sense and that they were, but I'm just saying he always, because of the size difference part. But anyway, outside of that, I don't really like his character, and I think once again in this episode he comes across as a bit of a self-important, entitled jerk.
Really? Does he?
Yeah,
because I mean, yeah, okay, so yeah, he gets upset that Rory doesn't want to hang out with him. But again, we're talking 16-year-olds, okay? 16-year-olds are, no offense to any of our young viewers, but 16-year-olds are dumb, okay? Like, I was so dumb at 16. And you don't know how to navigate always adult relationships. Plus, are we forgetting that, like, at the end of the episode, he comes to Rory, he apologizes, he admits that he sucks.
And that's a good moment.
You know, I mean, he's allowed to have moments of not being great. He doesn't have to be, like, a great boyfriend all the time. Sometimes he just get dumb.
Yeah, but he has quite a few, and that's part of the problem. Is it's a coming of age show, and characters have to learn from their mistakes, and a lot of times he doesn't. It's because he was a jerk over the whole "I love you" thing in season 1. That was terrible form from him.
Yeah, I have a different take on that too.
Okay.
Look, I think the "I love you" thing was not written well, but I understand what they were trying to do with it, which was to show how scary it can be to say "I love you" and how bad it can be when you feel rejected afterwards. Like, I don't actually think that Dean dumped Rory because he felt entitled to her being in love with him. I think he dumped her because he felt hurt and he felt embarrassed and he felt exposed and vulnerable, and he just made a snap decision, which was, oh, she doesn't love me, therefore she must not want to be with me. Was it the right decision to make? Absolutely not. It was a dumb decision. But it just shows, I don't know, maybe because as I'm getting older, I look at these characters and I'm like, oh my God, I'm actually old enough to be your mother. And I actually viewed a lot of teen characters a lot more sympathetically because I just think you're so young and you're navigating relationships that you're maybe not ready for, or you're learning as you go. And I'm not saying Dean doesn't have some bad times, because he's got some moments over season 2 where it's like, okay, dude, you got to calm down. Like, let's step back and not be a dick. But I think in general, Dean is too harshly judged by the fandom. And I think that a lot of his actions are too harshly judged, and people just go, oh, he's being a dick, without looking at like the deeper reasons for him being a dick. But I mean, that's just me.
I find him quite bland, and I don't...
I get that, especially as the seasons go on and his character starts to disappear more and more.
I don't quite feel the chemistry there between them. We'll obviously in the future talk more about other relationships with Rory, but I will say there is one relationship of hers I actually quite like.
Me too.
Well, we won't say it now.
Okay.
I do feel sorry for him in some ways, because obviously she promised him that they would hang out, and it's definitely a case in the episode then Rory is building this stuff up a bit much, and the best line he has actually in the episode is where he says, you know, you're not going to make up for like 8 years in one night. That's one line where he actually absolutely nails it. But yeah, I just think he should have been a bit more supportive. And it's similar to what you're saying. These are very young characters. And I think even if Rory was being a bit extreme, he should have just let her be extreme and just supported her and not have a bit of a tantrum, which I sort of think he did.
I understand that. Yeah, I get that. He definitely could be more supportive. But like I said, I do think the fact that at the end of the episode, he comes and he apologizes and he acknowledges how much he sucked. Like, he actually does. He's like, I'm so sorry. You know, I didn't mean to do that. I was stupid. I think that shows that even though he did have his tantrum, he's a big enough of a person to go away, realize, oh, shit, I treated my girlfriend badly. I made her feel crap. And then he goes and he apologizes. Like, it would have been so much worse if there was no resolution, if he didn't acknowledge that he had been a dickhead. And I mean, you know, we're all guilty of sometimes just letting our emotions get the better of us, especially when we're hormone-addled teenagers.
Paris stuff at the building site, because it's so good. I think if there's two characters that steal this episode, it's Paris and Emily. I think they are the two MVPs of the episode. And this is a big episode for Paris because it's really... She was already a promising character in season 1, but this episode takes it to the next level. I just love when she's listing all the different things she does. Like, she ran is it like she ran a suicide hotline or?
Oh yeah, she manned a suicide hotline. I heard that and I was like, oh, a lot of people.
That's pretty for Gilmore Girls. That's pretty edgy. But it's things like she adopted something or other animal. She's just listing all these things.
Yeah. She's like, I ran my first study group when I was 9. The youngest person in it was 13 or something like that.
Yeah, that was so good. That's so Paris. But
I know.
Yeah, we should just talk about that actress because she's one
Liza
of these.
Wheel. So good.
She's one of these little gems of casting, which the show was a discovery because it would have been an early role for her. And I think she definitely brings that Cordelia sort of energy to the show where she adds a little bit of sass, a little bit of spark, and she just has her own peculiar worldview as well, which brings something different.
I don't know if you know, but Liza Wheel auditioned for Rory. So she auditioned for Rory. They didn't want her for Rory, but they loved her so much that they actually created the character of Paris for her. So Paris was not an original character. They just loved Liza so much. They were like, we have to have her in the show. We won't cast her as Rory, but so they wrote Paris for her. And then she ended up being like one of the greatest characters in the show.
Of the show,
I think Liza Wheel has such great comedic timing. Again, another actress that's got really good comedic timing. She does those rants so well, you know, when she, like the one that you were just talking about, she just can reel them off really well. And I think that her chemistry with Alexis is really good. I very much enjoyed their dynamic and their scenes. And like I was saying off screen, in season 1, Rory just had the patience of a saint with Paris because Paris is so awful to her in season 1, and Rory just keeps trying and just keeps, you know, batting it back until eventually they become friends. And I just think Paris, it's really funny actually. Someone pointed out, they were like, why would Paris tell Rory all of this if she's in competition with Rory? So it makes you think that maybe underneath she is maybe trying to help Rory, you know, because, you know, she points out all this stuff that Rory didn't actually know yet because, you know, growing up in Stars Hollow at maybe a slightly less standard high school, and her mother never went to college, so she doesn't really know about the application process. So Paris just rolling all of that off. I actually have a question for you. It's kind of Paris related, but what do you think of Madeline and Louise? What's your opinion on Madeline and Louise?
I was just about to mention them. I like them.
Me too.
As part of the group with Paris, and I like how they actually do warm to Rory a little bit before Paris does, and how they will try and stick up for Rory, but they just feel like a natural sort of like clique of friends, really.
They do, don't they? Yeah.
And an episode from the first season I really like, which features them quite a lot, is the one where they go to the concert.
Concert Interrupters, the Bangles concert.
Great.
Yes,
that's a great
episode.
Yeah. So I like them. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think they work really well with Paris. I like in this episode that Madeline keeps trying to be friendly with Rory, and Paris is like, Madeline, come on, and Madeline's like, okay, gotta go, and because it's Madeline who actually tells Rory about the building together thing, and you see Paris and Louise are like, what are you doing, dude? Shut up. And
we weren't supposed to mention that.
Yeah. So I like Madeline.
So another question, just looking at like this storyline, is obviously we probably agree Paris has gone to the extreme with this stuff, but do you think there's a case to be made that Rory should have taken it a bit more seriously, or is it fair enough that she hasn't?
I think it's a tricky area. I do think that Rory needed that push that Paris gave her to understand that she needs more than just good grades to get into college. But I do think she gets a little too extreme about it, at least in this episode. I like that they dial it back a bit. And, she joins the paper and she does a few other things that add up to be extracurricular activities later on. I think I definitely understand her freak out, especially Rory, who's wanted to go to an Ivy League college since she was young, suddenly realizing, oh, crap, I haven't done enough. But you don't want to go as extreme as Paris, maybe go to where Paris is, then dial it back a bit and then stay there, So I think the reaction was understandable. I didn't think she needed to go as extreme as she does, but luckily she does seem to dial it back a bit and realize that it's a balance. It seems so hard to get into college in America, man. Like they need like submission essays and interviews and this and that. I mean, we do interviews here too, but like it's insane over there just trying to get into university.
Yeah, and I think you could see this episode as being like quite a good critique on that. Just how stressful, how much pressure. Because I've been exposed to it a little bit because like my best friend went to Oxford, for example. So that that was a very demanding like culture and getting into it, but then also keeping up with the level of work they expected from you. And I think that's one of the things I was going to say about Rory is it's a nice side to Gilmore Girls to actually see a working class character actually progress in this way. And I mean, technically you could say she's middle class, but like part of the thing I think with Lorelai moving away from the rich parents at a certain age, and she's raised Rory in this more working class town. So in some ways I do think of them as a bit more working class, even though technically they come from that sort of family.
It's tricky, and we can talk about this more if I guest star on some more episodes and we get into the later seasons when Rory actually does start to move a bit more into her grandparents' world of privilege. It's like, yes, I think to one extent, it's like, yes, Lorelai is working class 100%, but she does always have that cushion of her parents. Even if she doesn't use it, she does have it. And a lot of working class people don't have that, like when she had to pay for Chilton, it was the very last resort that she took, but she still had that resort to take. She could still go to her parents and say, I need money, please pay for my daughter's private school. So I do think that sometimes Gilmore Girls loses its message a little bit just because of the contradictory nature of Lorelai still having her parents, but they do also show quite well that Lorelai is independent and she does work for herself, and she has taught Rory to be more independent and to, have that. But like I said, in the later seasons, if I join you for later seasons, we can have some conversations about Rory moving a bit more into the world of privilege, which I do think she does in the later seasons.
Screw up maybe when they are exposed to a more richer sort of lifestyle, and how you do change as you grow up and you make mistakes. But I guess one of the things the show goes for is then it's meant to be quite an aspirational show with these characters, because obviously Lorelai builds herself up and gets to run her own hotel, And Rory obviously builds herself up and, you know, gets into a prestige college and ultimately is aiming to be a journalist. Grace has a good one in this episode where she references Thelma and Louise.
Yes.
I forget the exact line, but I think she's talking about her and Rory, how they're not going to have their Thelma and Louise style moment, which is very good. Yeah. So that's a good one. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much the episode. There's some good stuff with Lane and Rory, isn't there? Because Lane's going away.
Lane's going to Korea.
Yeah.
With the massive suitcase. I love the massive suitcase. I think it's in the previous episode she calls Rory and she's just standing next to the suitcase. And it's like as tall as she is and like massive. And she's like, I just saw the suitcase I'm taking with me to Korea. And let's just say it could fit your stuff, my stuff, and still have room to put both of us. I also love but can you say Hyung? No, what is that? My Korean name. I do love that. There's also the engagement party at the end for Lorelai and Max, which we see the whole town arrive at. There's a cute moment. That's right. Kirk's walking around with a megaphone, which who gave Kirk a megaphone? Like, that was just a dumb idea.
Yeah, that was asking for trouble.
But I do love when the little girls are dancing up on the gazebo and Rory's like, why aren't you up there, Kirk? And he's just like, oh no, my tapping days are behind me. And, then she makes
he's worried about it tipping over.
Yes, and then she starts commenting about like the 2x4s and the structural integrity, and he's like, "What?" And she's like, "Oh, I helped build a house today." And he's just like, "Oh, okay."
Impressed, yeah.
Let's talk for 2 seconds about Luke, because I got some issues with Luke, man.
Lane she's another character that brings something a bit different to the show, because it's really good that a show that's over 20 years ago now, it had like a Korean character as one of its main characters, and just bringing that different perspective, because like she definitely is a more working class character and has a very different upbringing than Rory.
Lane and Rory's friendship. Like, I just love that they've been friends since they were kids, and you see that they always remain best friends, and they're really close. And I love how Rory kind of, you know, helps Lane through all of, you know, Mrs. Kim's insaneness and intensity. Rory's there to help Lane and buy Lane her CDs if she needs them and stuff like that. Because when you have parents that strict, you need friends who are going to help you get out of that kind of strictness. So Lucas.
He's barely in this episode, so I can't really think of anything he would have done to piss you off, but go on.
So this is actually linked to Lorelai's entire engagement. Okay, so I know Luke has a thing for Lorelai, okay? And it's got to be hard to see her with another man, but he's such a dick about it. You know, like when she tells him that she's getting engaged, he doesn't even congratulate her. He just immediately starts talking about how weddings are horrible and expensive and where are you going to live and what are you going to do? And I can't help but feel like part of his attitude is not helping Lorelai at all, because she's already having doubts. Not that she should marry someone if she's got doubts. And in this episode, again, Lorelai says to him, she's like, oh, I told my mother about me getting engaged and she was horrible. And Luke's just like, yep, nothing like a wedding to screw up a family, and just starts going on and on and on about like.
But don't you think that's just part of his like dark humor? Like, you know, that's sort of his character. He's very deadpan. He's very sarcastic. I get that,
but he basically spends Lorelai's entire engagement being a dick to her about the fact that she's getting married to Max. And it's like, you don't do that. You just don't. And then we're getting ahead of ourselves. So unfortunately, I do need to skip ahead just to make my point. He then builds her that hooper, right? And that's supposed to be like, I'm supposed to suddenly forgive him for being a dick for the hooper, the you know, the big thing
I think
to stand under.
What you mean? Yeah. Okay.
And I'm suddenly supposed to think, oh, because he did this big gesture, everything's okay. And this is my issue with Luke, and we're going to get into this as we go on. He's so bad at being there for the day-to-day stuff, and then he does these big gestures that suddenly is supposed to make everything okay. It's like, no, be a decent guy from the beginning. Your friend is getting married.
I think he is a decent guy
about it. I just think that when it comes to Lorelai and her relationships, it's like, you know what, buddy? If you don't make a move and you don't tell her how you feel, you don't have a right to be a dick about her dating other people, okay? You just don't, because you don't get to stand there and pine silently.
Yeah, but I'm not convinced that he is, and even if he is from time to time, once again, it's just this thing of he's a human being. Sometimes human beings screw up. And no one on this show is immune from that. They all screw up at some point.
Oh, definitely. Like 100%. And Luke's definitely got some good points. Like, he's got a lot of moments where I think he can be a really decent person. I'm not saying that he can't be. I mean, when he takes in Jess in season 2, that is such a big undertaking. Like, a lot of people would not do that, you know, and he tries really hard with Jess. He's really good to Lane and Zach later in the season. He's really good to a lot of the townspeople. He bails Kirk out of God knows how many disasters, and that's really good. But I also think he can be a real asshole, and I don't like that part of his personality. And I think that it really does come out when it comes to Lorelai and her love life and her other love interests. And it's like, I don't find this charming. I don't find it charming that he's always a jealous prick whenever she's with someone else, because it's like, no, like I said, you don't get to stand there and not say anything about your feelings and then be an arsehole to her for dating other guys. It's not like she belongs to you. Every single time she mentions the wedding, from when she gets engaged to when he makes the hooper, there's at least half a dozen instances where she mentions the wedding. Every single time he's an arsehole. Every time. There's not a single time when he actually says congratulations or I'm happy for you or anything like that. He's just an arse. And then he makes the hooper and all of a sudden everything's fine. We forgive him because he made her this beautiful thing.
Okay, I think you're misrepresenting that a bit, but okay. I'll see how I feel when we see more of that stuff.
Okay.
The scene in question, I think I just read it differently to you, because I just read it as more, it's meant to be comedy and it's meant to be his. So I just read that more as a funny scene. Because,
I get that. Yeah.
Like, because in the scene, I didn't even get the impression it bothered Lorelai. Like, she might have rolled her eyes a bit, but it was more banter, and I think she sort of understood, and it was just him being cynical old Luke, you know, making a joke. So
fair enough.
That's just the way I read that scene. So
yeah.
Whereas I understand what you're saying. There's other scenes where, he is letting his own feelings get in the way a bit much.
And I could be wrong. You're right. That scene could just be supposed to be Luke being his dry self, because you're right. He does have a very deadpan sense of humor, and he does tend to be a bit more negative and a bit more growly and stuff. I think maybe because it's coming off so many other scenes where he says, you know, similar things. It's like you put them all together and they form a picture. Maybe if this was just like an isolated incident, I could be like, oh yeah, it's just Luke being Luke, but it feels more pointed because he's already said like all these things about like Lorelai and Max getting married. But we'll see how it goes. But like I said, Luke, I'm not saying Luke is a bad guy, definitely not. And he's definitely got so many instances over the show where I think, you are such a good guy. I mean, I love in season 1 when he makes Rory the coffee cake for her birthday. Like, that's really cute and sweet and stuff like that. But I do think when it comes to Lorelai and her love life, she's got some issues. And if we get into season 5 and 6, are we going to have some conversations about Luke in those seasons?
Yeah, because, I mean, later on down the line, I really like them as a pairing. And I do ship them and I like their dynamic, but probably when they get together, like initially when they get together anyway, there are some rough moments in the writing.
Yeah.
And it's probably just what the show suffers from a little bit anyway, than like you're rooting for certain characters to get together. But when they do, I think the writers feel the need to create drama, and sometimes that can feel a little bit forced.
Yeah,
and I think that's what happens with Lorelai and Luke in later seasons. So we can.
We'll see how we go.
Actually, have an unpopular opinion similar, and it's not a character I hate, but I'm actually not a big fan of Suki. I don't like her that much.
No, blasphemy!
I know exactly. I was going to say that's blasphemy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Suki. I do kind of understand how she could get on people's nerves, though. Like, she is a bit much sometimes, and they do play up the clumsiness and the, the scatteredness and the flakiness a bit sometimes. But
that's the thing. But it's not about the actress. Melissa McCarthy is really
she's
good.
really good. Yeah.
Like, she makes the character more likable because of her performance. But
yes.
The character.
No, so you go.
No, I was just going to say it's a character I don't dislike. Like, I don't hate the character, but I just don't
love her.
To her, like,
yeah.
Yeah.
She's just kind of there, like Suki's there, just kind of there. I will say, though, one thing that I will always give Gilmore Girls props for, especially now when you look at Melissa McCarthy's resume since then, is they let Suki be attractive and actually like be feminine and get a love interest before her skinny best friend. Melissa McCarthy being a bigger woman in Hollywood, she's now been typecast in like kind of the roles that she did in Bridesmaids. They don't let her be attractive. They don't let her be feminine. She has to be the big butch roles because she's a fat girl, which is just absolute bullshit. Because as we see with Suki, she can be a very attractive woman if you actually let her. So I will say for Gilmore Girls, that was actually quite progressive for the time to have not only a plus size actress on the show, but to present her as desirable, attractive, to allow her to get married before her skinny best friend. And they never once in the entire series mention her weight, ever. And it's such a refreshing change because you don't often see these types of characters. And again, being a bigger girl myself, not quite as big as Suki, but, being that kind of figure, it's very nice to see fuller figure girls portrayed. That's why I love Penelope on Criminal Minds, because you actually get to see these girls presented as attractive and desirable and people. They get to just be humans and be characters.
Who's even better than season 1? Would you agree with that?
Season 2 was my favorite season for a long time. It's got some really great episodes. Like, I love some of the later episodes in this season. I like seeing Rory come out of her shell a little bit more. I really like the progression of this season. And Richard's retirement storyline later on in the season is another great one. And for me, I get some great Christopher and Lorelai scenes in this season. So there's a lot to love in season 2. And I definitely think it improves upon season 1. So yeah, it's off to a good start.
Yeah, a good start to the season. So we both like this episode quite a bit, and there's some decent things to talk about. So yeah, we'll definitely have you on as much as possible for these, and try and get you back for the next episode, because the next episode is another quite big one, because it's at a party and Lorelai is having doubts about getting married, and she admits that to someone on the phone, because it's sort of funny because I read the Netflix description, and in the description it doesn't actually reveal who that someone is. It just sort of says someone important to her or from her past, and that makes us start to have second thoughts. So we've got another big episode next time, so we'll definitely try and have you back on for that one. So
excellent.
Look out for that one coming up soon. But thanks for listening. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below about this episode, about some of the things we've talked about as well. Rachel, if you want to promote your channel.
Guys, you can follow me, Rachel Macdonald, video essays about TV shows and movies. I don't know that I have any Gilmore Girl episode essays up yet, but I do have some planned for the future. So watch this space. And one of them is defending Dean. Don't tell Keith. So my Tumblr is also linked on my YouTube. And Keith usually puts a link in the description, so come and follow me everywhere.
Okay, thanks guys. I don't really have an outro yet for Gilmore Girls reviews, but I'll try and come up one for future ones. But thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys again soon.